Thank you for that. Just to let everyone know, we will be recording the session. One of the reasons we're doing that is we want to be able to share parts of the presentation that we'll go through today for the wider community, just so that they've got a source that they can go to find out a little bit more about the project. Yeah, my name's Stephen Weir. I am a consultant working on this project around the wastewater treatment plant in Cornella. My background is around community engagement, so I'm basically here tonight just to help facilitate the session and just to keep things on track, monitor some questions as we go through with my colleague Matilda, who's here in the background too. We've got a few presentations that we'll go through shortly, but I just thought we'd pause right now, and I want to throw over to my colleague Rob just to basically give us a quick acknowledgement of country before we get started.
Rob, you're
You're
on
on
mute,
mute,
sorry.
Rob.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Woman welcome tonight, everyone. My name's Robert Ogden. I'm a proud Bunurong man. I'd like you to welcome you all here to talk about Bunurong country and King Road. I'd like to acknowledge my ancestors and pay respects to my elders, past and present, and all First Nations people here with us tonight. For Bunurong people, country is everything. Our identity, our culture, and our responsibility includes lands, waterways, plants, animals, and the stories that connect us all. It is also important to recognise that this project on country is being done in the right way. Western Port Water has worked in partnership with Bunurong elders and knowledge holders to ensure cultural values are respected and protected. We also acknowledge and thank Western Port Water for its partnership and commitment to protecting this culturally significant place. This work shows that it's possible when we walk together, respecting culture, protecting country, and sharing responsibility. Once again, I'd like to welcome you to have this conversation about what's going on in Bunurong country. Please walk gently, respectfully while you are here, and thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I'd like to also just extend my gratitude to First Nations elders. I'm joining you today from Wurundjeri country. Very grateful to be here and for their continued custodianship of the land. Just to give you a bit of an update on what we're going to talk about today, just in a second, I'll quickly whip around the various presenters to say hello from Western Port Water and our consultant team, just so you get an idea of where they're from and what they do. We'll go through a bit of an understanding of the site. We're really conscious that for a lot of people in the community, King Road Wastewater Treatment Plant is maybe a bit of a mystery. Like what goes on beyond the gate is, I think that's what the invite tonight actually posed as a question. And we really want to make sure that everyone understands what it currently is, because there's a little bit going on site around changes to the wetlands and the storage down there, but there's this bigger opportunity that we're exploring, which is around ways that the community might actually get some access to the site in the future. We will have a chance shortly for a Q&A as well, and we'll give you a rough idea of what is going to come next in terms of next steps. Before we do the introductions, I think we were all we're pretty au fait now in terms of how this sort of online workshop type environment runs. But just as a little bit of housekeeping, we're recording, as we mentioned before. We'd invite anyone to put their cameras on if they feel comfortable. But if you can, please keep your microphones muted until we get to the Q&A session. Throughout the various presentations, if you've got a burning question that you'd like to ask one of the presenters, can I ask that you pop it into the chat, and at the conclusion of individual presentations, we can pose those questions to the speakers. If we don't get to them straight away, we will hold those and we will return to them later on in the session. When we get to that section at the end, which is the sort of Q&A and the sort of interactive part, if you can use the raised hand function that's at the top of your window there on Teams, that would be much appreciated. As usual in these environments, we just ask that you be respectful and give everyone a chance to speak. And just to reassure everyone, this is the first conversation that we're really having about this project, and that Western Port Water are committed to making sure that the community come along on this journey of what hopefully is going to be a really exciting new phase for the King Road Wastewater Treatment Plant. Just to whip around everyone in the room, you just met Rob Ogden, who is a proud Bunurong and Tarwilmi and Tyreelor man. Sorry, Rob, if I'm not getting those correct. And he's a managing director of Tarwin Cultural Services. Rob, do you want to just quickly say hello and anything about Tarwin?
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and thank you. Yeah. Started Tarwin Cultural Services up about 3 years ago after working 25 years in cultural heritage management, and it's I've had a great opportunity to work with Western Port Water and various other organisations down on the Bass Coast. So I think this is a really important project that has both community benefits through the treatment plant, but also some cultural heritage and cultural values that are being preserved within that space as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Rob. We've got 3 speakers here tonight from Western Port Water. We've got Gareth Kennedy, who's the General Manager of Corporate and Customer. Gareth, if you want to say hi.
Hello, everyone. Looking forward to tonight. Still trying to work out the context of that photo for Meet the Team, but I guess it's that we're all good eggs, and hopefully we'll give birth to a few good ideas tonight.
Gareth, that was amazing, and I'm really glad that you saw that obvious link. We've got Andre Garcia here, who's the project manager, and he's from the Engineering Projects Division.
Hi, everyone. Yep, I'm running the project on the ground at the moment, so there's a lot going on, and I'm excited to give you more context on the project.
Thank you. Kate McKenzie, who's the project coordinator for the entire project that we're working on. Her role's within the Partnerships and Recreation Division.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Really happy to be here tonight. So, yeah, hope you find it worthwhile. Thanks, Steve.
And just finally, we've got Alexandra Lee, who's part of the consultant team working on this project. Alex is from an organization called Spire, and she's a landscape architect.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Yeah, really excited to be working on this really interesting project with Western Port Water. I'm a landscape architect based in Melbourne, but I grew up in East Gippsland, so always exciting to be working on any project east of the Big Smoke.
Thank you, Alex. Great. Well, without further ado, we're going to basically do the intro part about the site itself. We've got a short video that we'll play to accompany Gareth, who's going to do a bit of a voiceover to let you know a little bit more about the site, which I can assure you, after having visited it, it's a bit of a surprise what goes on at King Road. And once you've seen this video, it'll make a lot more sense about what we're thinking about in terms of future community access. Over to you, Gareth.
Might just need to unmute. Yeah, great.
Thanks, Steve. So yeah, I'll be your David Attenborough voice over this footage as it gets ready. And I should say that there is technical experts listening in on what I say that will correct me, no doubt, if I make any errors. But King Road Wastewater Treatment Plant, as most of you will know, is located just off the Bass Highway in Coronella. It's 168 hectares, and it's near the township of Coronet Bay, and only just a few kilometres from Western Port and the Bass River. Today, the plant provides wastewater treatment services to around 3,000 customers across waterline communities on the Bass Coast. It treats up to 0.94 megalitres a day using mostly natural biological processes supported by mechanical systems, and it operates 24 hours a day, all year round. Surprisingly, as a wastewater treatment plant, it doesn't smell as bad as you might think. It actually smells much more like your average farm. Smells aside, this site is much more than a treatment plant, as some of the footage shows. The treatment process produces Class C recycled water, of which 100% is used on site to irrigate pasture and eucalyptus plantations. So these trees that you'll see in some of the footage are then harvested by Phillip Island Nature Parks to feed koalas in their care. And that's been going for some time now. It's also a working farm and an important habitat for wildlife, such as eels, turtles, kangaroos, migratory birds, and birds of prey. In the eastern part of the site, cattle graze non-irrigated land. Guy's Creek also runs through the area, which has been fenced and revegetated over the past 5 years in partnership with Melbourne Water and Bass Coast Landcare Network, who was pictured in that photo when we started the video. The site is also part of a rich Bunurong cultural landscape, the wetlands of Guy's Creek and surrounding landscapes serving as places of ceremony, sustenance and storytelling for thousands of years, and we'll no doubt hear more about this shortly from Rob. Currently, the site is not open to the public, but we do offer a small number of guided tours each year, and BirdLife Bass Coast have done bird surveys in the past. Tours are typically attended by bird watchers, naturalists, and community groups, and the feedback is always consistent. It's a place of good, positive news stories and somewhere where people would want to experience the landscape. And move on to the next slide, if you like, which explains why we're all here tonight. So as you've seen in the video, public access to the site has been very limited to date, and for valid reasons. There's risks that we need to manage on site, but obviously if that's done well, there's real opportunity here to support community health and well-being, environmental outcomes, and even regional tourism. We're now exploring what that future could look like. So as part of a $6.46 million national water grid project that was funded by the Australian government and in partnership with the Victorian government, a concept plan for the site is being developed to guide cultural values management and recreational use and development over the next 10 years. This forms part of the King Road Recycled Water Wetland Storage Project that sits alongside a new wetland and storage system that we will be introduced to shortly by Andre, our project manager. Over the past 7 months, we've been working with our internal teams at Western Port Water, traditional owners, representatives from the Bunurong Land Council, Aboriginal Corporation, to start shaping ideas for the concept plan. But now we want to hear from you as community representatives. So please have a think as the session progresses. Things like, what do you value most about places like pictured in the video? What feels realistic and achievable as opportunities for us to explore? And how do we balance community benefit with affordability for customers and responsibility around the risks that we will no doubt need to manage? Keeping services affordable always remains a core commitment for us. It's also important to say that we will always have a working wastewater treatment plant on site that will need to be managed. So some areas will remain restricted and not every idea that we come up with tonight will be possible. But we do see opportunities for future use that are low impact, carefully managed and respectful of safety and environmental and cultural values. This is a longer term opportunity to work together with community, industry, traditional owners to shape something really positive and beneficial. So I'll now hand over to Andre, who will walk you through the proposed wetland and storage system.
Thanks, Gareth, and good evening, everyone. The Bass Coast is growing, and by 2040, Western Port Water's service area is projected to reach up to 8,000 customers, which is more than double what we serve today. That growth brings exciting opportunities, but it also means we must increase capacity at our wastewater treatment plants to protect our economy, our environment, and the livability that makes this region so special. So today I want to talk about how we're responding with a smart nature-based solution with a new integrated treated wastewater storage lagoon and wetlands system. So our existing plant is doing a great job, but the future demand requires an upgrade. Subject to planning approvals, construction is expected to begin in late 2026. We're investing in an integrated system that combines advanced engineering with nature-based treatment processes. So this isn't just about adding capacity, it's about creating multiple benefits at once. So it's providing more storage for recycled water, high quality recycled water available for reuse, new habitat for native wildlife, and carbon absorption. So what will the wetland storage system look like? The system has two main parts. It will be a purpose-built floating and constructed wetland full of native wetland plants, and a separate winter storage lagoon connected by pipework and are fully integrated into our existing treatment processes at King Road. So unlike a conventional stormwater wetland that you'll see in sort of housing estates, this wetland is specially engineered for advanced filtration and water conditioning. It'll polish the treated water, making it suitable and safe for reuse on farms, in industry, or as a long-term possibility subject to meeting strict water quality requirements for environmental flows. So the system will operate by treating wastewater from the existing treatment process that'll flow into the wetland. As the water slowly moves through the wetland, native wetland plants will absorb nutrients. The plants in the wetland and the wetland soils will capture suspended solids, and beneficial microbes in the root zones will further break down the waste products. The natural polishing process reduces the need for relying on any additional energy-intensive mechanical treatment. Once it exits the wetland, the cleaner water can then be directed into our adjacent new storage lagoon for later use, or it can be recycled and used back through the wetland system. So throughout the entire construction operation, I will just want to iterate that your wastewater and recycled water services will remain completely unaffected, and there'll be no interruptions to any customers. So we look forward to keeping the community updated as planning progresses and construction begins in late 2026. So thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Andre. We haven't had any questions in the chat as yet, and that's all good. We can definitely wait to have the conversation towards the end. Going to hand over to Rob again now, just to talk through the work that he's been managing for the project, particularly in conjunction with the Bunurong Land Council. Over to you, Rob. We may have lost Rob briefly.
No, I'm back.
Oh.
Sorry.
No, that's okay, Rob.
Yeah. So, thanks. Yeah, I suppose the work that I've done is with Western Port Water has been around assessing and developing a plan around the cultural heritage values of the initial wetlands project. Which through that process uncovered an Aboriginal, I think there's 3 or 4 Aboriginal sites there, but the main one was a camp area. We haven't got the official dates back yet from the age of that site. But I think the importance that we have with this site is really around, the landscape is a culturally significant landscape in the fact that it sits within the floodplain of the old Bass River, and there's only 2 other sites, and the other site that is recorded is directly opposite the entry to King Road itself, that was uncovered during the Bass Coast Highway duplication. Strangely enough, by the same archaeologist that's running it now, Vincent Clark. And I think that might have been around 15 to 20 years ago. But I think it also shows that the presence of Bunurong places and spaces and cultural assets are there. You know, as a historic wetland system, this place holds, you know, a deep cultural meaning, you know, for the freshwater and the saltwater influences plant systems and wildlife and flora that cover this space. So it was really important to understand that, and we've spent a bit of time over that period having the discussions with all the key speakers and Western Port Water people here tonight about how we can manage that cultural asset. And I think, you know, with what's come from that about preserving that, I think it is now permanently a cultural asset, which tells a story, and that story will be developed through that plan over the next 10 years about how we can integrate that within the space. And I, you know, I think it also becomes an asset, not just for Bunurong people, it becomes an asset to tell a story about more broadly to the Bass Coast and the visitors there, that these landscapes are, you know, 20, 30, 40,000 years old and hold them stories. And here's an opportunity to talk about that in partnership with Western Port Water, and, you know, having that shared responsibility to tell that story and understand it, and create a genuine cultural respect within that space, which we are doing. And ultimately, you know, it's King Road Wetlands stands as a place where cultural heritage is not just protected but strengthened, where historic values of the wetland are honoured, the living culture of Bunurong people is supported, and future generations continue to learn from that and care for and connect with the country and the story about the people. So as we move forward, I think that is a key part to where we are moving forward in the next 10 years, and we hope that it becomes an asset not just for my mob and my people, but for everyone on the Bass Coast, and in the future it becomes an educational tool as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob, and you know, greatly appreciate your guidance around this really important factor in the site, around the cultural heritage on site. It's a pretty fascinating story that we've got just right here near Coronella. I'm going to now hand over to Alex Lee from Spire, who's going to talk a bit more through the kind of complexities of the site in many respects, but also where the more immediate opportunities are going to come up, as well as talk through some examples that might help the participants on this call to really understand that there's lots of things that can happen on sites like this, some very close by. Over to you, Alex.
Thanks, Steve. Right, so I think I might just start by also letting everyone know that, you know, our role here through Spire as landscape architects is we've been engaged to prepare a concept plan so that Western Port Water have a really clear tool to guide them in the future, with particular regards to the development of a concept plan that really looks at the cultural values and the recreational opportunities for community for opening up this site in the future. So as part of that general proposition by Western Port Water to look at the King Road wastewater treatment plant site, it's really important to understand what does the site look like in plan? What are the different areas that we need to consider in terms of restrictions and accessibility to the community? And what are the key existing ingredients of the site? So I'll just orientate everyone a little bit. So we've got a black and white area behind the plan here, but all of the colour-coded represented areas are the extent of the King Road site that's managed by Western Port Water. We've got King Road running along the bottom. We've got that labelled in white text on the bottom. We've got the highway over to the right-hand side of the plan, over to the east, just cropped off the plan. We've got Coronet Bay over to the west, and then Coronella to the northeast. So hopefully everyone's kind of got their head around. I know everyone's not spatially used to looking at plans necessarily, but hopefully that gives you a good sense of where we are. So we currently enter the site via King Road, and what I'll do is I'll work backwards from the zones, and I actually start with zone 4, which is in the centre of the site. And that is the restricted operations zone, which you will have seen in some of the images earlier today. And that's where most of the kind of front end treatment happens when the water enters the site. Immediately around zone 4 in the dark green is zone 2, which is the wetlands zone, so the treatment lagoons, and also the vegetation that's currently been grown on site for the koala browse, as we saw in the video and as Gareth introduced us to the context of that earlier. Then in the orangey yellow colour, so zone 3, we've got the broader farmland zone that's been irrigated by the pivots on site. You can probably just make out some of the circles from the pivots in the aerial photo there. And those are restricted zones during irrigation times and really important use for the water at the end of its treatment cycle. So really important function of the treatment plant at the moment. So we've got those kind of sit at either east and west end of the site. And then we've got what we refer to as zone 1, which is the zone around Guy's Creek and the periphery. And it's the zone that we feel like has the most opportunities to consider transforming that site for recreational opportunities for community. And it's also the site that really has the strong cultural values that Robert was talking to us about earlier. So it's a really nice way to connect everyone together onto the site in a really safe way, with a really exciting part of the area being Guy's Creek, which sits within, the old Bass River alignment. So if you'd like to go to the next slide. Thank you, Kate, and thanks for drawing those circles around while I was talking. That was really helpful. So I think the video that Gareth did a voiceover gave us a really good overview of the site, but I'll just reconnect you back to some of those via the images here. So again, in the centre zone 4, we've got the mechanical treatment, which is the first photo sitting up on the top left there. We've then got the pivot irrigation that sits in zone 3. We've got the zoo browse, which are these, really incredible stands of eucalypts that sit in zone 4, predominantly kind of to the west, to the south of zone 4. In zone 2, we have the 2 main treatment lagoons, and it's also zone 2, probably worthwhile noting, where the new wetlands going to go, which is just next to the right of the arrow that Kate's just drawn. And then zone 1 is Guy's Creek, and there's also already been some great re-veg work on that part of the site already, which we'll be certainly looking to build on in the future. If you can go to the next slide. Thanks, Kate. So I guess you're probably sitting there going, well, how is recreation compatible with a wastewater treatment plant site? What are the things that we think are really compatible? And I think it's really important to recognise that when we're thinking about recreational opportunities for the community on this site, there really is a strong interest in making sure that they're compatible with the values of the site, the need to protect and maintain the site's core function as a water treatment plant. Really important to look at the obvious opportunities that a site like this provides, particularly with an excess of water and particularly with a transition from farmland to other uses. So there's some really key things that we've thought are really kind of probably easy win opportunities in a way, in terms of really compatible things to consider in terms of recreation. So Kate, if you'd like to go to the next slide. We've just got some key images here just to get you to start to think about the things that we're thinking are really compatible with the site. We're really looking in the future where we'll have, a significant amount of re-veg work happening. We're really looking at restoring the waterway more holistically and also potentially reinstating some wetlands within the low-lying area of the floodplain. So it's really important to think and to have in your mind that, we're talking about what currently looks like a paddock and farmland with a few dotted trees here and there, and you might be going, I just can't see what you're talking about here, and we'll get to that in a minute because we can show you some great examples. But sites like this are being transformed across Victoria and interstate, and so I think that it's just really great that Western Port Water are taking on the challenge and seeing what land within their management can they offer back to the community for similar purposes. And I think biodiversity is really something that has so many multiple benefits, and particularly to community, because we know how much being in a healthy landscape is really great for our health and well-being as well. So revegetating this landscape is a really great win because it transforms it into an incredible site that in the future will be a wonderful place to visit. So we're really considering that bushwalking will be a really compatible use for the site. Bird watching, as we say, like there's an incredible amount of bird life already at this site, and with further development of wetlands for treatment functions, but then also for biodiversity functions that will grow in the future as well. We're really keen to ensure that the Bunurong cultural values of this site are shared values by the whole community. So we're really thinking that it's going to be incredibly important to make sure that we've got great signage and education and research attached for the site as well. So we're really looking at this, as a living classroom that can teach people all about the layers of the different parts of value of the site, and really think about how much value can we build into this site in the future so that everyone can share that experience together. Might get you to jump to the next slide. Thanks, Kate. So I think it's really important for us through the work that we do, because we do a few different projects like this across the state that we're exposed to that you might not be aware of. So it's really important for us to say, well, here's where we're thinking, and give you some examples to learn from. So if you could go to the next slide. Thanks, Kate. One of the really obvious examples to look to in the first instance is the Werribee treatment plant, which is our Western treatment plant out in Melbourne. And this treatment plant is incredibly highly regarded internationally. It's a Ramsar listed wetland, which has really been created by the byproduct of the wastewater treated from the treatment plant, that still to this day sits in the original treatment lagoons primarily to support biodiversity, and not necessarily because those treatment lagoons are needed for wastewater management anymore. It's got the second most diverse bird population in Australia, next to Kakadu, and people do really go to visit this site with a very specific purpose for bird watching, and it's such an important site, particularly knowing how much of our wetland and natural landscapes we have changed since colonisation and really taken that out of the landscape. So it's incredibly important to consider through these byproducts of our existence, i.e. the wastewater treatment plants and the water that we generate, what values can we give back to nature from that excess use of water or excess production of water that we're in control of. So Werribee treatment plant, great example. Next slide. Thank you, Kate. Another really great example is the Wonga Wetlands, which is up in Albury. And the Wonga Wetlands is an extensive site that has been more recently used as farmland, and Albury City are using the wastewater coming out of their treatment plant, the treated wastewater, to provide a water source back to the wetlands again that's really revitalised their site. And there's a really strong component of community engagement for this site. There's walking trails, bird watching, and community have access to be able to experience this site. So in terms of I guess a more regional opportunity, I think that this is a really good example to show and what has happened already on other sites. Next slide. Thank you, Kate. A little bit closer to home, this is a project that is literally being constructed at the moment by Yarra Valley Water. So they manage the Upper Yarra treatment plant site, which sits in a region of Melbourne that's a really important part of the Lewick-Barring Conservation Area, which is a conservation area really with a focus to look to help protect our threatened state emblems of the lowland leadbeater's possum and the helmeted honeyeater. So Yarra Valley Water have a treatment plant directly adjacent Birrarung, adjacent the Yarra River, which also has farmland surrounding it that's been used for great cattle grazing. They've identified an opportunity through an excess of water and really well appropriately located site that they manage, that they can actually transform this site into a really critical piece of habitat conservation and reconstruction to help support those species. At the moment, this site is under construction, and for the most part, the area around here really looks like the paddocks that you can see off to the right-hand side of the image. But what's really important to think about here, if your mind is kind of wanting to jump to, well, what can that transition look like, is There's a site adjacent this site called Haining Farm, which 7 years ago, approximately, maybe 7 to 8 years ago, was planted out for the very same purpose. So if you could jump to the next slide. Thanks, Kate. So this is Haining Farm, which is currently a site managed by Parks Vic. This site was planted, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago. Someone can happily fact check me on that. So this is a site visit that I did with Yarra Valley Water, just looking at what we can learn from this particular site, because it's already getting great establishment. There's heaps of birds. They'll be looking to reintroduce the helmeted honeyeater into this site in a few years' time, and it's really great to see how much can change and how much vegetation and growth you can achieve, and how much a site can change in a very short time frame. So hopefully that kind of gives you quite a good idea, but I think it's really important also to kind of scratch below the surface and understand a few more of the layers here. So Kate's managing these slides. Kate, if you want to go to the next slide and we'll have a look at the video. Hopefully it's going to work. It looks a bit skewed there, but so Australian Ecosystems, who's a local contractor, who helped build this project, have put together a video to show everyone a bit more about it. It does seem to have cropped it. Thanks, Kate. So hopefully that gave everyone a really good snapshot. And I think that whilst the vegetation community, the plants and the animals are quite different at Western Port Water, hopefully you can get a bit of inspiration to understand how much a site can transform, particularly when you've got an excess of water that you can use to really help fuel it to make it grow. And I think that it's really exciting to think about the opportunities that are provided at Western Port Water if you look at Haining Farm and the Yarra Valley project as, local inspiration for this project. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Alex. And hopefully those examples have really helped everyone on the call just to get a little bit of an inspiration around the kind of things that we're hoping that we might be able to achieve at King Road. I thought, as per the slide here, first up, we're kind of onto the interactive part of the evening now. I'd just invite anyone who's on the call potentially to pop a question in the chat or pop your hand up. If you've got any particular questions that you want to ask any of our presenters about what you've heard tonight. That's an absolute stampede of questions there, I see. And thank you, Alex. She's just put in the chat for anyone interested, you can visit Haining Farm anytime as it is a Parks Victoria site. No clarification questions. I guess that suggests that those were exceptional presentations, everyone. You can give yourselves all a massive pat on the back. Thank you. I can see some round of applause happening there in the background. A couple of things just to touch base on around sort of some questions and I guess a request for feedback from everyone who's on the call here. Don't feel you need to contribute to this. We know sometimes people feel a little bit quiet and shy in these things. A key thing to consider about with this process is we have got a live survey on the project page for this project, which gives you a little bit of an explanation of the kind of things that we're looking at, especially around recreational opportunities. And we'll put a link in the chat shortly for that. And we would love people to have the opportunity to share that with their friends and family too. Oh, yes, and Matilda's just very kindly just popped that information in the chat for us there. So I did see we had one person sort of typing in the chat there, but while we wait for anything to crop up there around questions, I guess an open conversation to those who are in the room, if everyone's willing, is knowing what you know about the site now. And and as Alex and others have been at pains to explain, that there are some quite, there's operational limitations around what can and can't be achieved on site. But I suppose, what would make this a place for you to want to visit? Maybe you live locally and you love the opportunity to actually just be able to visit here and walk, or to see the incredible bird life that's been mentioned that's already there and hopefully will get even better. But I guess, just an open question to anyone who's on the call, whether they've got anything that they'd like to say about, what would make it feel like a meaningful place to visit. So I just saw in the comments there from Mick, it says Shaz Green representing local wildlife rescue to release, standing in for Simone. Excited to see the protection for local wildlife habitat. I would wholeheartedly agree with that. Thanks, Shaz.
I think it's so nice to see that what animals do come even just from the fact that the treatment plant is there already, and so that it really is if you build it, they will come. And so it's always really exciting to see and have something for us to kind of connect as humans. I know we kind of really can gravitate towards seeing, the cycles and the kind of patterns of animals and particularly birds coming and visiting sites. I'm a little bit of a bird nerd. I don't actually have that much technical knowledge, but it is certainly something that I know really kind of gets me out, is to go and do a bit of bird watching and understand, where those good opportunities are, in the environment that we live in.
I guess another, Gareth, you've got a question?
I was just going to, I guess, emphasize the principle of trying to allow our customers and our community to experience this site. So, part of our aspirations for recreational and cultural benefit is to, yes, by all means, enhance biodiversity, but we really want people to experience the site and attract people to the site. We have risks that obviously need to be managed at the site, but there's an opportunity there, to I guess, improve health and well-being for our community and really try to attract people to the site. And I think that's just an important principle that we want to get out there.
Thanks, Gareth. We have a hand raised from TPRA.
Hi, I was just wondering if the plants that are going to be planted, are they going to be native to the area or just generally native to Australia?
Who's best to catch that?
I'm happy to take that if someone from Wastewater wants me to. Or Kate, do you want to go?
Oh, I think are you referring to, I think maybe the new wetland and the plants in that, is that
Yeah,
what you're
that's
referring to, correct?
Zone 1.
No, yes. So perhaps Andre, you're probably best placed to answer that in terms of the wetland plants.
So I believe we're waiting to get the final design about the exact plants that are going to be planted in there, but the idea would be they are native to the area that will be planted in there. So, but we will have more information on that once we get the final design for that.
Amazing.
Jake, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hello everyone, and thank you for joining. I'll just add to the question around the plants. Introduce myself. I work at Western Port Water. I work in the projects team with Andre, and thank you everyone for joining tonight. So we have done some work with some local nurseries around the plant species and working with Rob in what would be the best fit for our wetland to meet all our objectives, including native species. And we've done a trial with a floating wetland at Cows as well, and some smaller trials out on site around what plants would grow best. So we have an idea. We have a list, and we will continue once we finalise detailed designs and understand the surface area for planting and the spaces that are required for that planting. We'll have a greater understanding on the individual species, but absolutely native to the area, species that thrive in wetland conditions, and working closely with our traditional owners on how we can maximise planting from an Indigenous view in the wetland itself too. So we, as Andre said, we'll have more information as we carry through the design, but we do have a list that we're working on now.
I would imagine that within the Guides Creek area, we certainly would be focusing on, looking to build on the local value, Indigenous plant values in any revegetation and planting works that happened in that particular zone of the site as well.
Yes, back to TPRA.
Hi, it's Michael here.
Hi, Mike.
I'm just interested into what point the plans are actually developed. It doesn't sound like they are, in fact. But I wonder whether it would just about the sort of the rewilding of it, in a sense. I wonder about just letting it go a little bit wild and then work with what happens there. In my experience down here, the bush or the nature comes back really quickly just by itself. But I don't suppose that's part of the plan, in a sense. But it would be great to see the Guy Creek, aka the ancient Bass River, something sort of substantial again, wouldn't it? Would that happen by itself or not? We don't have anyone on board really who's the ecological sort of feed in?
Just to give a bit, I guess, a bit of context of where we're at the moment. So we are finalising a detailed design for the wetland and the winter storage, which will then flow into construction. Part of the way that we're once we get this detailed design, that will also have sort of what plants and everything are going to be included in there. So that's how we're at the stage right now where we're getting very close in the next probably month or so to having basically all that information of how it's going to be built and look and everything like that, including the plant species as well. So as Jake said, we've done trials with floating wetlands and things like that where we have an idea about what we want, but until we get final confirmation.
I'm jumping a bit ahead, I realise. I'm sorry.
Okay. And I think it's probably fair to recognise, just in case anyone's wondering, is there's probably slightly two different timeframes happening here. There's the new treatment wetland that's being built, and that's very much underway and being designed and being delivered. And then there's the future community open access area that's being considered where we'll be looking at recreational opportunities. And so we're really using this consultation with community to get an understanding what people's interest is there. And so that's it's the same project in terms of looking at the site holistically and what values it can deliver for the local community. But really there's two slightly different timelines. Hopefully that's
it's working with the sort of engineering aspect of it really to it's about waste management or something that is the essence of the project, and then we work with that. I mean, just in terms of the actual sort of the way the logistics of disposing of water and stuff, is that I'm off tap, to use a metaphor, but the engineering happens first, and then we work with that. Is that have I got the timeline correct?
Gareth, you want to take that?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll flag I'm not a technical guru like others on the call, but it might be worth going back to the map slide just to talk to, if that's okay.
Yeah.
If we can move back to that. Sorry, quite a few slides to go back to. Yep, that's it. So if you can see there that which is the number 4 restricted operations zone.
Yep.
So zone 2 at the moment is where a lot of work and a lot of engineering and a lot of planning has been undertaken to make sure that we get a combination of a storage that can manage the demand that growth will bring, along with a wetland where we're really trying to demonstrate how a natural solution can be deployed to treat wastewater. As opposed to a more traditional wastewater lagoon, if you like, which doesn't necessarily lend itself to increasing the biodiversity aspects that we're hoping to bring with the natural nature-based solution in a wetland. So that's in zone 2. And that is, as people say, very, it's very well progressed. We've been, as a steering committee, we've been looking at detailed plans and moving those through with a lot of questions. So that has very strong timeframes around it. Then the other side of the project is we've deliberately tried to build the project budget so we can contribute to larger aspirations for the site to maximise recreational benefits, community benefits, and cultural values on the site. So you're right in thinking that the thoughts and the views around what that could be like are relatively immature, because we want them to be led by community. We want them to be led by traditional owners. We want them to be led by community groups, environmental groups, etc. So you're right. Other than looking at the site, looking at managing the risks. So what are the risks that would prevent community from utilising the site? Where is that in the landscape? So where can we basically highlight that, opportunity lends itself? And now we're really exploring and engaging with community to say, well, outside of those wetlands, what else can we do on the site? Like what's appealing? What are your priorities? And what's linked and tied to your values as community, and how can we work with you to pursue those aspirations for the site?
So I've actually been to the plant a couple of times now with a couple of tours from the TPRA, and it's one of the most exciting sort of unknown parts of the Bass Coast I've ever come across. So I'm very excited about the whole thing.
Excellent.
So I'm sort of been around, area 2, 3, and 4, and we've just sort of with Terry, I think, is it who's the sort of
Tony.
He's a great asset to you guys, I have to say too. But we stood like at that sort of southeast corner of the big square pond there, and looked out over that area 1A and 1B, and that's is that, am I right in thinking that's essentially where a lot of the work will happen?
No, so correct me if I'm wrong, Andre, and others on the call, but a lot of the work will largely be around that zone 2 area for the wetlands itself. But 1A and 1B, which is where Guy's Creek runs through, as you can see. That really lends itself to opportunities with community. So that really is a space which is a high priority for us.
We're talking about essentially then, is it?
Yeah.
And I guess, Gareth, the point, sorry, David, I work for Western Port Water as well. The point is that I guess we hope to make water available from coming out of zone 4 and 2 so that it can support the ecology and habitat and any other values within Guy's Creek. But there's there's quite a bit of regulatory control over that from a discharge and water quality. But that's part of the vision.
So you won't actually be adding any more water into Guy's Creek? Is that?
Oh no, that's ultimately we would like to be able to do that, but there's basically treating the recycled water to a level that would allow that to actually have some semi-permanent water holes there, and maybe even recycling water through there, so that we actually have even more wetlands within that area. So that's one of the concepts that could develop in 1A and 1B, but there's constraints around having off-site discharge and all those sorts of things that we have to work through.
Obviously, I sound like I'm a bit fixated on 1A and 1B, but that's where I sort of thought that areas 2 and 4 and 3 were sort of pretty well utilised, actually, with the trees and so on, and the lucerne, or what is it that Terry grows over there in 3? It's the the lucerne that they sell on and stuff. Is it lucerne?
It's a mixture of pastures. Yep.
Yeah. And they do three cuts a year or something. It's quite extraordinary, the way it works. That's over here, farmland. Yeah, the pivots. Yeah, and so 1A and 1B are what the way I see it, the exciting areas. But 2 is where they do a lot of harvesting of eucalypts and stuff for the koalas and that sort of stuff. Is it?
Michael, I might hit pause on your
Yes.
questions because you definitely you're an enthusiast of the site, definitely. Just because I'm conscious we're just at time really. I just wanted to acknowledge there's been a couple of great questions that came through in the chat as well. Melinda asking about particular flora and fauna species that were endangered in the area. And Kate, thank you for your response in there just around the species that have been recorded or not recorded on site. And also about a question there about regenerative farming practices. Thanks, Jake, for catching that too, especially around the work that you've been doing with land care previously. Unless there's any other urgent questions, we might start to wrap it up because it's just gone past 8 o'clock. Wanted to acknowledge to everyone, again, there is the chance to communicate with the project team directly if you've got particular technical questions that you've got, but also importantly that we do have the survey open at the moment, and we'd love more people to know about the project. I think it's sort of been summed up, Michael. You said, you know, you've had a peek in the site, and it's really quite special. And the fact that there may be some community access coming soon, albeit in certain pockets. I think when people actually get when they do spend some time on site, they get to realize what the opportunity is here. So any help that you can get in letting people know that this is happening and that there's a chance to influence it would be wonderful. Just noting there as well, if you complete the short survey, you go in a draw to win a credit on your water bill, which I'm quite sure is very appreciated by everyone in the community if it's possible. There will be project updates regularly posted on the project page. The link is there and it's also in the chat too. We will be hosting one more session next week, which is predominantly being targeted towards a more stakeholder audience. It may be a slightly different technical flavor to some of the things we'll be talking about. But having said that, I think we've got a pretty tech and water savvy audience here tonight, which is great. But if you think there's anyone else who's particularly interested in coming along to that, on that project page, there is a link there that you can sign up for that too. I just would like to pass over to Kate as we wrap up, just to make any concluding comments, and before we actually wrap things up for tonight.
Thanks, Steve. I think you've summed it up really nicely, but in closing, thank you all for your interest. I think, Michael, we might have found our president of the Friends of Guys Creek Wetland in future.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so as Steve said, please encourage you to fill out the survey, which will be open until the end of April. And in the next couple of months is when we'll be sort of consolidating that concept plan to really guide sort of the long-term sort of future for the site. So be sure to follow along. Yeah. Sorry, was that a comment?
I just said it was clearly a long-term project.
Yes.
And it's, thank you for getting the community on board early on.
Yeah, great. All right, well, thank you all so much. Do you want me to close, Steve? Or
I'll go on. I'll say
close.
good night to everyone too. But
Good
thanks for
night.
everyone's enthusiastic participation. It's really appreciated.
Yeah, greatly appreciated.
Yeah,
Thanks
thanks
all.
for your time, everyone.
Thank
Good night,
you.
Thanks,
See you later.
everyone.
Bye.
Good to see familiar faces.